from a mum, and I'm Vicky. We all have key times in our lives that seem to turn it upside down and change it for good, and I wanted to tell you about one of those situations. I was having a lovely day. It was sunny and I just fed him when I was cleaning up, and I got a phone call from a guy that my husband was out working with. My husband at the time was doing some odd tree surgeon jobs. He'd given it up as a career, as he didn't, well, he had other things to do, but he'd gone out on this one job, and the phone call started. Vicky, this is the phone call you never really wanted to receive. And my day just absolutely changed from that moment. My door was open and two people were just walking past, who I knew by sight but through nothing else. And I handed the phone over to them because I just knew that I had to stay strong at this point, and if I didn't, things would go wrong. So I handed the phone over to the guy explaining, and it became very apparent from the way he was responding that I was going to go off to hospital very quickly to see my husband, who was in a critical position. It became clear to me that John, my husband, had an accident with the chainsaw while he was up a tree, and he'd cut in right there, and it had gone through his artery, and his blood was just propelling out. You don't seem to absorb these facts particularly, thankfully. I think your body protects yourself in that situation. And I was in the car with this guy. He was taking me to hospital, and I just said, look, I've got to phone somebody. And I phoned up my mum and dad, but got my sister. And I spoke to her on the phone, and I gave her the bare facts that I knew, which was John has had an accident. He's lost a lot of blood. They've stabilised him, and he's been helicoptered off to hospital. And I just said, Sarah, get my mum and dad here, please, and can you get people praying? And I believe she started on that. I got to the hospital, and after witnessing a lot of people in the hospital racing around for this quite major accident, I got shown in, and thankfully to see him, the doors opened, and I just remember seeing my husband's face looking at me. He was on a bed. He looked surprisingly with it, but there were people milling around, all around him, wires and machines, people shouting, obviously preparing him for theatre. And I was able to go over to him and touch him and hug him and speak to him, and he just apologised to me, and my heart just went. I just felt so much for him. And my instinct, as was my friends two friends who had come in with me, was just to pray for him, just pray over him. And I was just whispering to him all the way as we were racing him to theatre. I was just whispering in his ear saying, Jesus is with you, Jesus is with you. To the point that, gosh, those people must have thought I was an absolute nutcase. But you just, oh my word, in the intensity of that situation, when you know that somebody that you love is just on the way out, in so much need, he just needed reassurance. And what I really want to communicate was that in the intensity of that situation, it was just utterly incredible to know that I wasn't spinning a lie, and that actually I had an incredible hope, and we both had an incredible hope, and that Jesus was right in the centre of that, and he was with us every stage of that journey. That journey for us lasted quite a long time. I mean, firstly, theatre was a good 8 hours, but I was there for quite a bit longer, waiting to find out what was happening. John's recovery in hospital was 6 days, which was incredibly quick, really. But then, yeah, what we had to deal with afterwards when he came out of hospital, I'd say, in reality, was 6 weeks off work, possibly 15 weeks until he was back up to speed. But the experience that John and I had within hospital of his recovery was incredible. We were drawn so much closer together because everything was stripped away at that point. I was 30 at that stage. It was 5 years ago, and to have to face death at the age of 30 was unthinkable for me. It was absolutely unthinkable. But I'd realised by the end of that night, in fact, once I knew that he was safe, I think my body then clicked into place, and I just, gosh, gone off to refresh myself, and I came back to my mum and I just said to her, "Mum, I think I saw what John's going to look like when he dies." And my mum smiled and she just said, "Yes, dear." But the fact that we felt completely interlocked with each other and with God in that time period was incredible. That was an experience that I think really we've been quite blessed with. From a mum's point of view, I mean, I had several perspectives there. I had my mum around and John's mum, and you know, to observe the three of us in that, it was quite interesting. I mean, the agonies that John's mum must have been going through, just as would be the case if it was any one of us and it was our child that was in hospital, was really, really shocking. But she was beautiful about it, absolutely beautiful about it, and wonderful and loving on that day, and fully committed to God and to His hand on the situation too. Likewise with my mum. I mean, you just saw my parents there. They just wanted to scoop you up. In a way, you become a child again, but you still have your adult responsibilities. It's your husband and it's your child that, oh, bless him, dear Noah, kept being passed from friend to friend, and he coped so well. But the only stipulation that I put down was that he'd come into hospital at 6 o'clock, so that 6 in the evening. So while John was still under and we didn't know what was happening, so that I could feed him. And he was a little gem through it all. In fact, he was for all of us, for me and for grandparents and for the godparents as well. You just knew that, not that you had to hold yourself together for a baby, because a baby's resilience is incredible, but what you had to do was you saw a greater perspective on life, and you just knew the responsibilities that you had. You also saw the joys in life that God gives you, and that carries you through things too. I think as a mum, the practicalities of it, the biggest shock for me was when we'd spent 6 days, or John had been in hospital for 6 days, and I'd pretty much left my son in the hands of other people, and I was at John's side, and that was where I was to be, and I had to be, and that was what I wanted, so that was fine. But on day 6, when the hospital phoned me and said, "John's made such good progress, he's going to be coming home today," and oh, you should have heard me. I was on the phone trying to persuade them that they'd made the wrong decision, because I did not feel capable of looking after John. In fact, I was really nervous. You know, I'd only been sure that he was going to make it home at any point a couple of days prior to that. So to think of being his primary carer was the most daunting thing ever, on top of looking after my little one as well. The mothers, our mothers were saying, "Oh, let them know your situation, let them know that you've got a baby," but they kept reassuring me beautifully that John was going to be fine, and that we would hold together as a family and we would do it. And I think that was quite an acid test. We obviously had wonderful help. My mum was brilliant, and so was John's family as well. But it was a juggling act, and it was stretching me at every resource that I felt that I had. But from facing death quite so closely, and the thought of losing your partner, and the thought of, because a lot of thoughts went through, but perhaps that was my family, that would be it from that point on, that it would be me and Noah. You just learn to appreciate somebody in such an incredible way. And John's and my love for each other has matured. I think it took a real fast track at that point. We had been strong anyway, but we'd allowed petty arguments to happen. But I just couldn't, from that point on, just take him for granted, and likewise he didn't me either.